Hello, and welcome to the Educators and Immigration Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Gerardo Mancilla. I immigrated to the United States at a young age and am currently working as an assistant professor of education. In this podcast, we will explore the intersection between various immigration statuses and how that relates to our K 12 educational system. We will explore how educators can support immigrant families, undocumented youth, and students with DACA. Join us to learn more about these topics, listen to our guest stories, and explore resources to support students. This is the Educators and Immigration Podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Educators and Immigration. I'm your host, Dr. Gerardo Mancilla, and today I'm really happy to be interviewing a friend and colleague, Lorena Munoz. We met as part of a podcasting course. I'm really excited to have her on the show today. Lorena is the founder at Pilar Financiero and a bilingual financial counselor. She's also the host of the podcast De Peso a Peso, which is a podcast in Spanish that focuses on financial literacy. Lorena is also a real estate investor and an advocate for the Latinx community. I'm really excited to talk to Lorena today about all the work that she has been doing with our Latinx community. Lorena, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
No, Lalo or Dr. Mancilla, thank you so much for inviting me. This is a real honor because to me, the message of trying to educate more people is so important. And no matter what you're doing, education in all its many ways is so very important.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering if we could begin by kind of having you share a little bit about yourself, your background, and your story.
Oh, sure. Well, do we have 2 hours? you know, the stories of Latins coming to here to the US always they're full of little intricacies. I went to college in Chile. I'm from Chile. I'm from Santiago, Chile. And I went to college and I knew that I needed to learn English if I want to do well in finding a good job because in the marketing arena, you needed to be bilingual. So I always been a hustler. So all throughout, I think my first job I was selling marshmallows like at 10 years old. But then I was working in a pharmacy and during college, right after my first year, I started working on the side because I knew my parents were really poor, and thank goodness I got a good scholarship to go to the university, and also I did get student loans, but I worked on the side, so I was saving a lot of money because the only way I could learn English, going to classes a few hours here and there is not enough. So when I finished my degree, I went to London and really in 3 months learning English, I learned more than in the previous 15 years learning 2 hours a week. So I always tell people that ask me, how do you can improve your English? It's like if you have the chance, if you don't have any debt, if you don't have anything that you're really attached to your roots, just take a trip, go for 3 months or 6 months to another country where they speak that language you want to improve. Like people here in the US, they ask me, oh, how can I learn Spanish? It's like, just go to Chile, go to Mexico, go to Costa Rica, just go to and immerse yourself. So that's kind of the first part of my story where never been in a plane in my life before. I just saved every penny the prior 2 or 3 years in college and I went to London. And that opened so many opportunities for me because when I went back to Chile, I found out about a scholarship through the Rotary International and to come here to the US. So I applied and I got the scholarship. And while in that trip, it was a short, like 2 months, I met who now is my husband, which definitely made things really easy. When I went back to Chile, he went down there, we got married, we came back. I feel like I had a leg up by having my papers, but I've never lived in a foreign country except for my 3 months in London and just uprooting yourself and leaving everything. It was very challenging and beginning. And besides, I didn't have any family except his family that really embraced me, but still, I left everything in my country in Chile.
And how was it coming to the U.S. then? You mentioned that you were part of a program that the scholarship or the grant that was allowing you to kind of be able to come here. Were you coming in, looked at some studies? Were you trying to do community service? Was there a specific purpose to the program in terms of coming to the US the first time?
The Rotary International has this program called GSC, Group Study Exchange, where every year, I guess, except for COVID, for the pandemic time, they match two countries. And in that year, they matched the US with Chile. So they
Mm,
picked five people, five applicants to come to the US, and then five people from the US will go to Chile. And actually, it was to learn about the culture, different places of work. So I wasn't really studying, but I was in English all day long.
yeah.
And we had to do presentations about our country. So it was really interesting. I met so many nice people. So it was a wonderful experience.
It sounds like a really amazing experience. And
Mhm.
as you mentioned, then you also met your future husband there with that. And after meeting your husband, I'm assuming you got married and then came over then after being married. And then coming to the US, you mentioned language being one of the challenges that you face. And you also talked about not knowing the culture, not knowing anything about the US. Can you talk to us a little bit about what was that experience coming to the US, having grown up in Chile, and what were some of the cultural differences that you noticed between Chile and the US?
There were many, and probably the very first one is like here in the South. I live in North Carolina. The English I learned in London was nothing compared to the English spoken here in the South. And I'm used to now. I say you all and all those weird things. But I felt like all those 3 months in England did not work. I was like, what happened? I don't understand a single word. So it was really challenging to try to communicate. So I made it a purpose. The first 3 months I was here, I went to the community college. So thank goodness here we have those resources. And I feel like not too many people use them, and they're free resources. I don't think in any community college they charge you for ESL, for English as a second language classes. And for me, I feel like if I had not taken those classes, then finding my first job and the second and the third would have been a lot more difficult if I had stayed, oh, well, I just know a little bit of English. I am going to work in a restaurant. So I'm not saying that working in a restaurant is bad, but if I knew I want to do more, I had to improve my English. I think that's the message. If you want to keep going up and make a better salary and improve the lives for your family and what you want to do with yourself, English, you must learn English.
And I appreciate you mentioning that opportunities that occur with the community colleges. You mentioned ESL as one of those courses that they offer. Sometimes they also offer English for the workforce as well. So, depending on what kind of career you work in, they have different specific English classes that are relevant or more tailored to specific work environments as well. And so, I know that sometimes the students come to the community colleges to study, and sometimes the community college has some programs where they go to your workplace and they actually talk about or give the classes in your workplace as well.
That's right.
I'm wondering, currently you're doing some work with non for profits to help communities learn about financial literacy. Can you speak to us a little bit about that work?
Sure. I have always, since the very probably my first job as a receptionist, which I had to start from the bottom because you need to make your way up. But I've always used my Spanish like at second skill to help people in the workforce. Then I moved into working several years for a nonprofit organization helping the Hispanic community here in my town. Then I worked in the financial industry. I worked for a bank for over 12 years. I learned so much there. And now I want to tell you that I lost my job last year due to a merger, which it was really, really difficult. But in this quest of improving my life, I have found the information that probably we'll talk about later, the financial independent movement. And thanks to that, I was able to take a break and decide what I want to do with my life. And so, with everything that I've learned, I want to keep helping the Hispanic community. I want to use my bilingual skills. I want to use my knowledge on personal finances, and kind of everything came together. And it's like, oh, financial coach. Then, how do I become a financial coach? So, I start reading blogs, reading information, and there is a nonprofit in town that actually many communities have. They have different names, but nonprofits where people can find help, find coaches that teach them how to improve their personal finances. Something very basic like, how do I start a budget? How do I start savings? What can I cut? How can I pay my debt? And things like that. So I'm the only bilingual counselor here in my organization. It's been incredible because I feel like I can do this job and help pretty much for free. So if the person cannot pay the $25 fee, we give the services for free. And we are also helping people with grants to pay their rent, mortgage, and utilities. So there's a lot of good things happening, which makes me really, really happy that I'm part of that organization. And I work there part time because on the side, as you said, I started a passion project and I wanted to send this message to the world, the Spanish speaking world, because I was learning all this information about how to become financially independent and everything was in English, just a little bit of Spanish. And say, I want to do it. I want to be that voice. I want to become the person that translate this information from English into Spanish. So I started back in, well, with you when we started taking the classes back August, September last year. But it wasn't until February that I launched my new podcast, De Peso a Peso.
Thank you so much for sharing all that information. You've hit on a lot of great information, starting with the financial independence movement. So I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what is the FIRE movement, Financial Independence Retire Early movement, and following up, then you mentioned bringing this information to the Latinx community as well. Can you talk about those two things?
I discovered the FIRE movement in mid 2018. We bought a house and we didn't sell the previous one. We thought, oh, we want to become landlords, but we didn't know anything about it. And still, we did it blindly. Oh, okay, as long as we charge little over the mortgage, we are all okay. Wrong. That's not the way how you decide how you rent a house. So after a year or two having one rental property that it was almost like just barely covering the mortgage, we were like, I'm selling this house. This is horrible. We made the worst decision. We cannot continue. But somehow I got into like a weekend training program on real estate and it opened my eyes. But actually the funny part is that weekend was like $200 and I found $200 in my wallet that I have no idea where it came from. So to me, it's a sign of God. It was meant to be that I went to that seminar. My children and I were thinking, we had a yard sale like a year before. I probably never deposited the money and I forgot. So I went to that seminar, but they wanted to charge like $40,000 for the follow up.
Wow, that's a lot of
And
money.
oh my gosh, it was like a big training, hand holding. They were going to pretty much make you a millionaire. But something in me said, do not sign in the dotted line. I was like 5 minutes away from signing at the end of the seminar. And I said, listen, really, I need to talk to my husband. This sounds amazing. I believe every single word they were saying. Then I came home and I started researching the company. And I'm not going to give names. The seminar was not bad at all because it really opened my eyes to many more things. So when I did the research, I discovered the Bigger Pockets community. And they explain, do not pay those $40,000, $50,000. Use that money, take a couple of months, start learning. We have all the information here and save that money for the down payment for your next house. And I didn't have the $50,000. I almost signed like for a couple of credit cards. It was, or I could have borrowed against my 401k, which it was insane. It seemed such a good idea, but after I started learning, and it's like, yeah, it would have been horrible. But Bigger Pockets, that's when I listened to my first podcast ever. And it was the Bigger Pockets Money. And they interview Mr. Money Mustache.
Hmm.
And you know that kind of worms that opens.
Yes.
And then they interview Brad and Jonathan from Choosify. And actually, some of these podcasts may be really way over your head when you've never heard these concepts. But Brad and Jonathan with Choosify, they made it so relatable. They made it like two regular people. They have degrees, they have education, but they're just willing to think differently. And for me, financial independence is not about getting to that first $1 million, $10 million. It's not the amount of money you get, but it's how you spend your money. You try to make more, so try to increase your income. But at the end, is how wisely you invest the difference. And I had no idea how to invest my money. I only had a 401k and I was saving at the most my 10%. I never knew that you really could save up to the maximizing your 401k every year, like the whole 19,600, like for the year 2021. I had no idea. I probably could have done it, but no one told me. And listen to this, if I go back to my training in college as I'm in ingeniero comercial, commercial engineer, business degree, whatever you want to call it here, I never learned about personal finances. A lot of finances for the businesses, but nothing how to deal with my own finances. So when we first came here, we were married, we were both working, we were saving a little bit, but nothing intentional. It was, oh, we did good, we didn't spend all the money, but we didn't have goals except maybe buying the house. But we had car loans. There was a time where we had three cars in the garage and one was just waiting there to be sold. But three cars, I can tell you all about the mistakes we've done in the past, and that could take another hour of this program.
Yeah.
But actually finding this concept of financial independence and having that extra savings that you start methodically saving as much as you can actually gives you opportunities and freedom. And that's the value for me, because now when I lost my job, I was okay. We could live in one salary,
Yeah.
which early in 2018, we were pretty much using both salaries and saving the 10% for 401k and maybe saving another 10%. But it would have been absolutely horrible to have lost my job and still needing the same amount of money. But we didn't. So it has really provided a lot of freedom.
And one of the things that for me, when I think about the financial independence movement, as you mentioned, is having different options as well and being conscious about where your money is and where is it going as well. And you kind of talked about that a little bit and thinking about having different ways of thinking about money from where we're spending it, how we're using it, how many cars do we have, what is the purpose of the cars, is there a different way to go about it? So you talked about the non-for-profit, thinking about financial literacy in terms of budgeting, how to pay your bills, how to get support, how to get grants. And on the one hand, we have the work that you're doing in the non for profit. We're thinking about what are those small steps that you could do to change and to improve your finances. And then with the movement, also thinking about then what are those 1% that you change to get better day in and day out, and thinking about it's not about changing everything from day to night to make sure that everything can get paid for, but rather being intentional about what is the 1% change that you're going to change. And it could be something like what your bills are or what you're spending your money out. Are you eating out? And thinking about finances in that way as well. So I think that for me, I always think about it as kind of like that idea of opportunities. What is something that you're willing to spend money in, and what are the things that where you can save the money for your future as well, to be able to have options down the line, as you talked about.
Yeah, and I think a big concept that it's changed our life is spend on what you value.
Hmm.
And if you don't value something, don't spend in it. But if it really, like, for some people really likes to go out, and a lot of people think, no, going out is bad, don't spend money. But if you value that, maybe don't go out every week or every day, just go once a month, but then do some dinners at home where every family that's invited brings in something. You still have the group, you still have the chatting, you still have the laughs, but you are not spending $100 in just the dish and the drinks and all of that at the same time. So it's thinking about how you spend. think differently, find better ways to spend the money. But it like, I love traveling. So for me, when I'm saving money, it's gonna be to go to a different country because I like to go experience a different culture, learn a different language, and eat different food. But then when I'm here, I am really tightening my belt because I don't care about the spending in here. It's I want to have the experiences, and savings allows you to have that freedom.
Thank you so much. And so the podcast that you started is talking about this whole topic of financial literacy, but you're doing it all in Spanish. You talked about the need to be able to convert some of the ideas that are very populated in blogs, in podcasts, in articles, and then thinking about how to bring those into the Latinx community. Because there are some blogs that are Spanglish, there's some Spanish, some English, and yours is completely in Spanish as well. Can you talk a little bit about how the community has been receiving your podcast?
I hope they like it. No, I see several comments on the podcasts that they like what I say and how I communicate these ideas. And I think at the end it's trying to tell people that this consumism, the idea, so you need to buy more, buy more, buy more, it really doesn't bring you happiness. What brings you happiness is the experiences, is the people you surround you with, and what you do with the laugh that you have, being relaxed, not having to work 20 hours a day and then you go from 6 days a week and you then only Sunday you get to wash your car and all of that. So I think people are getting that idea that there is more to life than just buying stuff. So I hope it continues growing. I get a report every week and I don't put many episodes. Like I did the first season, I did like 13 episodes. Then I took a break during the summer, and now I'm back at recording. And you will be also in one of my podcasts pretty soon. I love the experience. And then I see the map and people in Spain, in Netherlands, in Brazil, in Mexico. People are listening from all over the world. So it's like, okay, if I just get to change the idea of saving a little more and spending more wisely to one person, it's all it matters. It's just somebody that got their life a little better because the message I gave.
And so, one of the things that I'm wondering, we talk about the Latinx community as well, the bilingualism that's important to be able to reach them. Can you talk a little bit about the Latinx community in your city or state?
It has changed a lot. North Carolina in general, and all big cities in North Carolina. So we have Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, Winston-Salem. They all have grown a lot. And I can tell you because I've been in here in North Carolina for almost 21 years. I went away. I went to Pennsylvania 1 year in between, but many years ago. And I've noticed in the early 2000s, there were hardly bilingual people in the different fields. But now you see bilingual doctors, nurses, attorneys, which means we still have this influx of people that only speak Spanish. But now the resources are there available. So I think it's great. It's more multicultural and it's good for the South that we see a little more different groups, and the Latino communities are very important here in my city.
As you talk about the Latinx population growing in your city and your state, are there different immigrant communities that you've noticed that have been coming? You mentioned 21 years. Have there been different immigrant communities that have settled in the area or new ones that are coming to your area?
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but at some point out of the like the census on the year 2000, and then we had the 2010 and the 2020, it was a small population of immigrants, but like 70% were Mexican descendant. But now that has changed. You see a lot of people actually coming from California. So born first, second generation and born in the US and are coming here to North Carolina because the cost of living is a lot cheaper than in many other states here in the US. Now, definitely, there's a big group of people coming from El Salvador, especially when they started with the TPS program. So we have a Salvadorian community, a Puerto Rican community. We had a lot of people that came after Maria
Hmm.
from Puerto Rico. And then the rest of Latin America, you find Peruvians, Argentinians, Chileans. We're not very many, so but I'll say probably 50% is Mexican, but from the 80%. So you see more variety right now.
And so thinking about the diversity within the Latinx countries, but also different generations that are also moving within the United States, and
Mhm.
also different generations that might be growing in the same state or city as well. As you think about supporting immigrant families and communities, what are some things or resources that you think are helpful for the communities to have in your area?
Well, always churches. They are really, really important, and doesn't matter the denomination. But your church community is where you find a lot of the resources. But there are also in many places nonprofit organization. We are very lucky here that we have a very active Latino organization, the Hispanic League. And they put out festivals and they keep the community organized. And we always know what's going on with the legislature and changes that are coming to the city and to the state. It's really important to be part of a community, not stay isolated. Get to know who is around you. Go to the community college. They have sometimes groups. They are Latinos or Latinx, and they have resources. The community college, since they offer the ESL classes, you'll find a community there of the people that are learning English, and a lot of them are Hispanics. So, community college, churches, and nonprofit organizations. So, that's definitely good support. And we refer people from one side to another. It's like, oh, I need help with rent. Oh, I need help with this. Oh, I know somebody that work in this childcare or this other. So, it's like, yeah, we help each other a lot among the different nonprofit organizations.
And right now that we're still in COVID, but as people might have been falling behind on their rent, one of the important resources that you mentioned is there might be some financial support to help pay for their rent as well. And so it's important to kind of think about where might those resources be available to, as the different communities might be impacted financially because of the COVID situation that is happening.
Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
And so I want to go ahead and thank you for being on the show today. Where can people find more about you, the work that you're doing, your podcast?
You can look for the Peso a Peso in pretty much every podcast player. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it. I've looked, and yeah, you find my podcast in pretty much everywhere. And also, I have a Facebook group, like our community, where they know I let them know when I put new podcasts out. It's the same name. So you go to facebook.com/groups/ de peso a peso. And you can sign up, and I'll ask you to please answer the questions because sometimes people don't say, yes, I abide to the rules, or I only ask, okay, who talks in the podcast? They put Constanza, and it's like, no, my name is not Constanza, it's Lorena. But say, it's very easy. It has just a few questions, like two questions, and you can be part of the group, the Peso a Peso. And hopefully soon I'll have my website. And I know it's going to be thepesopeso.com. So it's going to be easy to find. I just need to get to that point. But, we're busy, mom, wife, real estate investor, working part time and doing the podcast. So, yeah, the day only has 24 hours, but I'm enjoying everything that I'm doing, and that I have the flexibility to be a volunteer and do all of these things. So it's great to be in this spot.
We're really appreciative of you taking some time to talk to us about financial literacy, specifically within the Latinx community. But and thinking about what are those steps that we could take on a daily basis to improve our financial situation. So thank you for being on the show, Lorena. We greatly appreciate you being with us today. For our listeners, please remember to like, subscribe, and share this with your colleagues, your friends, and your family members who can benefit from thinking about different ways to support undocumented students, immigrant communities, and this particular episode focused on financial literacy. Thank you and have a great day.